an eye on your time, and the acoustics in here suck, so really push your voice out.
All right. Whenever you're ready.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Sahil Chaudhary, and my topic is the correlation between in-person and online communication. So, here's an overview of the topics that we're going to cover throughout the presentation. Okay, you can go inside. All right. So to start, why this topic? So my intended major is computer science, and sort of a niche that I want to explore within computer science next year when I go to college is digital media. And within digital media is online communication and its influence on in-person communication. In modern day, online communication has sort of become a regular for us. However, we don't really understand that before our lifetimes, it wasn't always there. And we always resorted to in-person communication. So here's a quote from Amy Jo Martin, and she says that it's a dialogue, not a monologue. And some people don't understand that social media is more like a telephone than a television. So this sort of shows that like digital media, as I mentioned before, which is social media, sort of shows that it's more like a telephone, which is a use of communication online, than a television where you just learn things. So next, we're going to talk about the growth of online communication over the past couple decades. So as you can see from this graph, the red line shows the fixed telephone subscriptions, which is sort of like the phones we saw in like the 1990s that are stuck in the wall. And it's sort of plateaued, and if anything, it's gone like a little bit down. But from 2005, like nobody's buying more fixed telephones. And the other line is active mobile telephones, which I'm sure all of us have, like our iPhones and Androids, which, as you can see from 2006, 2007, has skyrocketed. Next, here's a graph from the North America Web RTC, and that's sort of just like how many people are using the internet now. And as you can see, since 2016, it's exponentially increased up to what's projected to be in 2027. So from these graphs, we can tell that the growth of online communication is a present topic and one that needs to be further studied. So now we're going to start to cover my gap. So what I'm actually studying in this. So there's already research that separately focuses on in-person and online communication. However, in my research, I sort of want to hone in on how like the two different types of communications like influence and interact with each other. And I want to see like, do people in today's day and age feel more comfortable communicating online or in person? So now we're going to get into my research. So online communication doesn't really allow people to pick up signs like tone and like the mood of the situation that they would in person. So from this quote, we can see that when communicating through text, we are limited to written word, which can lack the nuance and detail that we experience in face-to-face interactions. So like it says, things like ideas and tones could lead to misunderstanding when you're communicating online. PhD in media sciences, Dr. Maggie Mulqueen states that our increasing preference for texting over email and phone calls creates a higher quantity of interactions, but it decreases the quality, harming our relationships. So we know that like when we're communicating informally, we sort of resort to text messages and like digital media. However, when we're communicating formally online, we resort to email and LinkedIn and things of that nature. So from this we can tell that sort of our formal communications have a lot more quality, but it doesn't allow for us to send as much information over as our informal, which is more quantity over quality. So Arian Johnson and a school guidance counselor, John Pato, conducted a study in their middle school in which 94.6% of people agreed that they acted differently online than they would in person. And these are middle school students. So now we're going to get into the fifth part, my methodology. So due to complications with the ethics board, I was unable to conduct a study myself. However, I worked with a mentor, Ashim Lakpat, from Circular Edge, which is a software development company. And Mr. Lakpat was able to conduct a survey within the company and let me analyze his results. My mentor made a 5-question study and sent it out to his coworkers. And my goal was to analyze the results and try to find out why people act differently when communicating online versus in person. So the first 2 questions were, do you feel more comfortable communicating with higher authority figures online or in person? and the options are online, in person, or either or. And the second one is, does tone, which is the sort of thing I wanted to hone in on, does tone play a role in whether you avoid or select communication with a higher authority? And the options are yes, no, or possibly. The last two questions were sort of the same thing as the first, but I wanted to do it in an informal setting. So instead of a higher authority figure, I chose friends. So do you communicate more comfortably with friends online or in person? And does tone play a role in selecting in-person communication with a friend? So here are my results and my analysis of the results. So as you can see from this pie chart, when people were asked whether they communicate better in person with higher authority figures, a lot of people would resort to online, and as you can see, it was an even split between either or in person. And then my second question: does tone play a role in avoiding / selecting in-person communication with a higher authority? A lot of people said yes because they likely. A lot of people said yes because they likely get. Because when it's a higher authority, the tone likely plays a bigger role than it would when it's a friend. And third question: do you feel more comfortable communicating with friends online or in person? Most people said either, and you can see from the pie chart that it's relatively split and equal online and in person. My last question: does tone play a role in avoiding or selecting in-person communication with a friend? Most people said possibly, and it's still a relatively even split, but not that many people think that it does play a factor. So now I'm going to analyze these results. So side by side are the graphs for higher authority figures and friends online. And as you can see, we can see that more people are open to different types of communication with their friends, whereas they prefer online communication with a higher authority. You can see that the green in yes is way larger in. The green in online is way larger in higher authority figures. So this is the second question, and side by side, and it shows that tone plays a huge factor, as you can see with the 63.63% for green for yes. That many people think that tone is a big factor in whether they communicate in higher authority. And from the other one, from friends, a lot of people said no. So you can sort of see like the differences. And factors like tone, which are exclusive to in-person communication, play a huge role in why people prefer to avoid that style of communication when facing a higher authority. So now we're going to go into the limitations and the sort of things that I could explore later. So in the future, I'm going to try to study different populations or different types of people, like whether they're school students or such as high school students, to generalize my results to like a bigger population. And I also want to look into analyzing real-life emails and text messages, exploring how people utilize formal and informal communication based on the platform that they're using to communicate. So whether it's like email or text message. That's it.
Okay, my question for you is, what was one obstacle or challenge you encountered while implementing your research method, and how did you address it?
So my original plan was to sort of interview like my fellow high school students and make the higher authority figure be like their teacher. However, I had to consult a mentor who did it in a work environment, which was like, again, it probably yielded similar results than it would have with a high school student. However, like the work environment could be different.
So what might be the real world implications or consequences, like influence on others' behaviors, decision-making process, or discoveries related to your findings? Real world implications.
So like in the real world, when you're working a job, a lot of people like email their bosses. However, like when they could face them in person, and we can see here that sort of many people resort to emailing over facing them in person, and it sort of just shows us how like digital media, and as it expands, how much easier it'll get to communicate with your boss in the way that you would like to communicate.
Okay. In what specific part of your research process was your expert advisor? In in what specific part of your research process was your expert advisor most helpful? How was he or she helpful? What did you learn from the expert advisor about your research of field? Your field of research.
So my expert advisor was somebody who is actually working in that software engineering company, and he's just a worker there. So he was very helpful in sort of consulting and getting me people to complete the survey that he made the questions for, and letting me analyze his results.
Okay. Any other questions from the panelists? Any questions from the audience? No? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I have to cut some paper for a kid that's not coming yet.
Nope, not a problem.